Scary telling. I remember walking through the bluebell meadow, the sweet scent of the flowers filling my nostrils. It was a beautiful day, the sun shining down on me and the birds singing in the trees. But something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I felt like I was being watched. That's when I saw her. Marilyn, my beautiful wife, who had passed away 3 months earlier. She was kneeling down in the middle of the meadow, her slender fingers caressing the soft petals of the bluebells. I felt a wave of emotions wash over me, fear, confusion, but also a deep sense of longing. I had missed her so much, and now here she was, right in front of me. I approached her cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. As I got closer, I could see that something was off about her. Her skin was ashen and gray, and her eyes were dark and empty. But I couldn't bring myself to turn away. Marilyn? I whispered, my voice shaking with fear and excitement. She slowly turned around, revealing her lifeless face. For a moment, we just stared at each other, neither of us saying a word. And then she spoke. "Pete," she said, her voice low and raspy. "I've missed you." I took a step back, my fear rising. This was not my Marilyn. This was something else, something that shouldn't be alive. "How are you here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "How are you standing here in front of me?" Marilyn let out a low, guttural laugh that sent shivers down my spine. "I never left, Pete. I've been here all along, waiting for you to join me." I turned to run, but Marilyn was too quick for me. She grabbed me by the arm, her grip cold and clammy. "You can't leave, Pete. You belong here with me. Forever." I screamed as she dragged me into the dark abyss, the bluebells swirling around us. I knew that I was in trouble, that I was in the clutches of something far more powerful than I could ever imagine. But I couldn't stop thinking about Marilyn and the deep sense of longing that had brought me to her in the first place. The next thing I knew, I was falling, tumbling through the darkness. My screams echoed off the cavern walls, but there was no one to hear them. I fell and fell, until finally, I landed on the cold, damp ground. As I got up, I realized that I was in a cave. It was dark, with only a faint light filtering in from above. The air smelled of rotting flesh and decay, and I could hear the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance. And then I saw them. The dead. They were everywhere, their empty eyes staring at me hungrily. Some were crawling on the ground, while others were stumbling around aimlessly. They were all different shapes and sizes, but they all shared one thing in common: they were all undead. I felt a chill run down my spine. I was trapped here, in this dark, damp cave, surrounded by the dead. And then I saw her. Marilyn. She was standing there, watching me with her dark, empty eyes. I tried to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, unable to escape. "You belong here with me, Pete," she said, her voice low and raspy. "You're one of us now." I tried to deny it, to resist the pull of the undead, but I couldn't. I felt myself changing, becoming something other than human. The more I tried to fight it, the stronger the pull became. And then I heard a voice. "Hey, you! Over here!" I turned to see a figure standing in the shadows. He was holding a torch, which illuminated his face just enough for me to see him. He was a young man, with dark hair and a scruffy beard. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I'm Tom," he said. "I'm part of a group of rebels. We're fighting against the undead rulers of this place." He motioned for me to follow him, and I hesitated for a moment before deciding to trust him. I followed him deeper into the cave, my heart pounding in my chest. We walked for what felt like hours, until finally we came to a small, dimly lit room. There were a few other people there, all of them looking at me curiously. "This is Peter," Tom said, introducing me to the group. "He's new here. He needs our help." They all nodded, and one of them handed me a cup of water. I drank it eagerly, feeling a little better now that I was with other people. "So, what's going on here?" I asked, looking around at the group. Tom explained that the undead had taken over this part of the underworld and that they ruled with an iron fist. They were merciless, killing anyone who tried to resist them. "But we're fighting back," he said, his eyes shining with determination. "We've been planning a rebellion for months, and we're getting close to making our move. We just need more people to join us." I felt a sense of hope for the first time since I had fallen into this darkness. Maybe there was a way out of this after all. But then I saw her again. Marilyn. She was standing in the shadows, watching us with her dark, empty eyes. I tried to ignore her, to focus on the conversation, but I couldn't. She was always there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for me to join her. I knew then that I was trapped here, in this darkness, with no hope of escape. The dead had claimed me, and I was theirs forever. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. I lost track of time in the dark, damp caverns, and I began to lose my grip on reality. I started seeing things, visions of Marilyn, of our life together. But they were distorted, twisted, like something out of a nightmare. I tried to ignore them, but they kept coming back, haunting me in my sleep and in my waking hours. The other rebels tried to help me, but there was little they could do. They were fighting their own battles, trying to survive in a world that had been overrun by the undead. They didn't have time to deal with my delusions. And then I met her. Lucy. She was a young woman with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes. She was unlike anyone I had ever met before, strong, independent, and fiercely determined. She didn't take no for an answer, and she never gave up. We started talking, and I found myself opening up to her in a way that I hadn't with anyone else. She listened patiently as I told her about Marilyn, about the nightmares that haunted me every night. And she didn't judge me. She just listened. But even Lucy couldn't help me when the visions started to get worse. I started seeing things that I couldn't explain, grotesque creatures that lurked in the shadows, monsters that crawled out of the ground. They were terrifying, and I knew that they weren't real, but I couldn't shake them. And then I saw Marilyn again. She was standing in the distance, her arms outstretched. "Join me, Pete," she whispered. "Join me in the darkness." I tried to resist, but I couldn't. The pull of the undead was too strong. I found myself wandering through the caverns, searching for her, even though I knew that it was a trap. And then I found her. Marilyn. She was standing in a small, dark room, surrounded by candles. Her eyes were dark and empty, but there was something different about her this time. She looked happy. "Pete," she said, smiling at me. "I've missed you so much." I tried to back away, but Marilyn reached out and grabbed my arm. "Don't be afraid, Pete. We can be together again. Forever." I looked into her eyes and saw nothing but darkness. I knew then that she was lost, consumed by the darkness that surrounded us. But I couldn't help but feel drawn to her, to the promise of eternal life with her by my side. And then Lucy appeared. She burst into the room, wielding a torch. "Get away from him, Marilyn," she shouted. Marilyn hissed and backed away, disappearing into the darkness. Lucy helped me up, and we made our way back to the rebels' camp. "You can't give in to them, Peter," Lucy said, her voice soft. "You have to keep fighting. You have to keep hope alive." I nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope. Maybe there was a way out of this after all. But as I lay down to sleep that night, I knew that the darkness was still there, lurking just beyond the edge of my vision. The undead had claimed me, and there was nothing I could do to escape it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. We continued to fight, but it seemed like a losing battle. The undead were everywhere, and they were getting stronger every day. But then, one day, we received a message. A group of rebels from a nearby cavern had come up with a plan to take down the undead rulers of our cavern. They had discovered a weakness in their defenses, a way to attack them where they were vulnerable. It was a dangerous plan, but it was our only hope. We gathered together, the rebels from both caverns, and we made our way through the dark tunnels. We were armed with torches and swords, ready to fight for our freedom. As we approached the undead stronghold, my heart was pounding in my chest. This was it. This was the moment that would determine our fate. We launched our attack, moving quickly and silently through the dark corridors. We fought with everything we had, using our swords to take down the undead soldiers. But then we heard a sound. It was the sound of reinforcements coming. We knew that we had to act quickly. We had to take down the undead leader, or all would be lost. We made our way deeper into the stronghold, fighting our way through hordes of undead soldiers. And then we saw her. The undead queen. She was sitting on a throne, surrounded by her minions. She was a grotesque creature, with gray skin and dark, empty eyes. We knew that we had to take her down. We charged forward, our swords clanging against the undead soldiers. It was chaos, but we didn't stop. We had to get to the queen. And then I saw her. Marilyn. She was standing in front of the queen, her eyes blazing with fury. "You'll never take him from me," she screamed. I felt a pang of sadness as I realized that she was lost to us. She was too far gone, consumed by the darkness that surrounded us. But we couldn't give up. We had to keep fighting. We launched our attack on the queen, our swords flashing in the dim light. It was a fierce battle, but we were determined to win. And then it was over. The queen lay dead on the ground, her minions scattered around her. We had won. We celebrated that night, drinking and singing and telling stories. We had taken down the undead rulers of our cavern, and we had done it together. But as I lay down to sleep, I knew that the darkness was still there. The undead still lurked in the shadows, waiting to claim us. We had won this battle, but the war was far from over. In the aftermath of our victory, things began to change. The darkness that had consumed me for so long began to lift, and I found myself feeling hopeful for the first time in a long time. The rebels from the other cavern had become our allies, and we worked together to rebuild our world. We cleared out the undead soldiers and started to make the caverns habitable again. And I found myself drawn to Lucy. We spent hours talking, planning, dreaming of a better future. She was a ray of light in the darkness, a beacon of hope that kept me going even when things seemed impossible. We started to fall in love, slowly at first, but then all at once. It was like a spark that ignited a flame that burned brighter with every passing day. And then one day, we heard a rumor. There was a way out. A group of rebels had discovered a tunnel that led to the surface. It was dangerous, filled with traps and obstacles, but it was our only hope of escaping the darkness forever. We gathered together, a group of rebels from both caverns, and we made our way through the dark tunnels. We were armed with torches and swords, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As we made our way through the tunnel, I felt a sense of hope growing within me. Maybe this was it. Maybe we could finally escape the darkness. And then we saw it. The light. It was a faint glimmer in the distance, but it was there. It was the light of the sun, shining down on us from above. We ran towards it, our hearts pounding in our chests. It was like a dream come true, a miracle that we had never thought possible. And then we emerged from the tunnel, blinking in the bright sunlight. We were free. I looked around, marveling at the beauty of the world that we had left behind so long ago. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and there was a breeze that carried the scent of flowers. And then I saw her. Marilyn. She was standing there, watching us with her dark, empty eyes. But this time, there was something different about her. She looked peaceful. I approached her cautiously, not knowing what to expect. But she just smiled at me, and I knew that everything was going to be okay. "You did it, Pete," she said, her voice soft. "You escaped the darkness." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. It was finally over. And then Lucy appeared. She walked up to me, her eyes shining with happiness. "We did it, Peter," she said, taking my hand. "We escaped the darkness." I smiled at her, feeling a sense of joy that I hadn't felt in years. We had made it. We had escaped the darkness. As we made our way out of the tunnel, I looked back at Marilyn one last time. She was still standing there, watching us go. But this time, she looked happy. I knew then that she was at peace, and that I could finally let go of the darkness that had consumed me for so long. We emerged from the tunnel, blinking in the bright sunlight. We were free. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of hope for the future.